Thank you very much, City Clerk. Now we have an opportunity for the applicant to respond to the public comments. Thank you.
Thank you again. Yeah, there are just a few items that I wanted to address. I think there was a question in respect to how the shrubs will be maintained. So the shrubs are going to be landscaped within the common open space within the development along the two property lines, and they are going to be maintained by the HOA's landscape company, and the CCNRs will stipulate that the project is responsible to maintain the shrub buffer landscaping in perpetuity for the project. I hope that addresses that question. I guess, Emmy, could you bring up the slides? I want to address the D105. I believe that was the question. It's at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Perfect.
So I believe this was the question in respect to the height, the 30-foot height. This is common in almost every development that we do in the Bay Area. This is the same detail that was used for the Stevens Creek project. The dimension from the eave to the grade is 29 and 9 3/4 of an inch. So it's below the 30-foot threshold. That's what the fire departments ask you to do to comply with their requirements. That's what is being proposed for this project. We did meet several times with the fire department to have this approved. Again, this is very common amongst all of our projects, this standard detail. Okay, so that was that question regarding D105. Do you want to address the 30-foot?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the community members mentioned sort of a 30-foot setback. I just want to mention the governing codes that are part of AB 130, there's three of them, 4290, 4291, and Chapter 7A of the Building Code. Those have numerous cross-references, and it took us a while to get down to this one, so bear with me, and I'm happy to send this information because it's going to be a long code citation. It's California Code of Regulations, Title 14, Division 1.5, Chapter 7, Subchapter 2, Article 5. You don't have to, I can send that to anybody. What that is that's the 30-foot horizontal setback to the property line. It actually has a second component to the center line of the street, which we are in compliance with. But that's Section A of that code. Section B continues and says, if there are, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit because the code citation, it basically says if there are various constraints, such as density, there may be a reduction in this setback. And I'm going to loosely paraphrase, if you can demonstrate or have a number of features, one of which is the non-combustible materials within 5 feet of the homes, which we comply with. That's what we call also known as Zone 0. There are some other measures that are really intended to mitigate or prevent spreading of fire from structure to structure. So what we did was that's where we added the exterior fire sprinklers to the exterior balconies, and we increased the ratings of the exterior walls to 1 hour ratings. Those were the mitigation measures, and those were sort of summarized in what's called an alternate materials in compliance with this code that the fire department reviewed and approved. So I think those are part of the application documents.
So those are in essence prescribed mitigation measures within the code to comply with that section. And that was reviewed by staff and the fire department. Okay, so I'm going to continue, and obviously I can come back to any questions that you have. So one of the reasons we had the neighborhood meetings, we were required to have one, we elected to have two, wasn't to tell the neighbors this is just what it is and you don't have a choice. Essentially, we wanted to meet with the neighborhood to not only hear them, but also to explain what the project is and answer any questions outside of this kind of a forum. So they had the opportunity to ask where we could go into detail and answer the questions. So I just wanted to say the rationale why we had 2 neighborhood meetings. Let's see. You want to address the one way in?
Oh, yeah. And again, I don't pretend to know these neighborhood streets like any of the folks in this room. Mr. Drew Chang was kind enough actually to share his study with me in advance, and had a little bit of an email exchange. And I just kind of asked the question. I think the point was that he said Linda Vista Drive was the only way out. Just my simple looking at a map, it just looked like there were other ways out as well, such as Hyannisport, Columbus, and Terrace, which go down to Bub Road, which seems to lead to, I think, Rainbow, which gets over the highway or the tracks. I think there's another way, Bub Road, or to McClellan, which goes over, and then continuing on to Bub Road over Stevens Creek. So those were just what I saw in my simple look at the math. I don't pretend to know all the back roads of this neighborhood like the folks here.
So there were a lot of comments regarding the reports that were generated for this project, whether it was civil reports or architectural details. What I can say is all of our reports were provided by professional consultants on our part, but then they go to staff. Staff reviews them, comments, and after they've reviewed them, they send them to a third-party consultant outside of the city to plan check. We spent 14 months having all of the reports that were generated for this project be third-party reviewed, not only by staff, but by outside consultants that staff had hired. Obviously, we paid for that. But what I would say is it's very easy to stand up here and say, well, this civil flow rate doesn't work, or in my opinion, I have experience in this, and I don't think the report analyzes this correctly. I think that would be valid if we submitted reports and you had to take the reports based on our assertion, but that's not the case. Everything has been third-party reviewed. I just wanted to point that out. Okay, there was a comment that the project is required to have 2 access points. So that's not the code, the fire code. If you're over 100 units, you're required to provide 2 access points. I've had many projects where I've been up to 90 units and we've been required to only provide 1 access point. Over 100 units, you have to provide the 2 dual access points. I just finished a project in Los Gatos, 155 units. We were required to provide 2 access points because it's over 100 units. That's just the fire code. I think there was a couple comments, and I'm not sure if the person who made the comment was aware that the waivers that were requested on this project were requested in order to make the project work. These projects subsidize a considerable amount of affordable housing, and to make that work, the state has allowed waivers and concessions to be applied in order for a whole project to be feasible. So that's why those waivers and concessions, when applied, still provide the project to be consistent with the objective standards that the city has. I think that's all I had. Did I skip anything?
Wasn't sure if you wanted to mention sort of the distribution and the housing element.
Yeah, please. If you could do that, then we'll have more questions.
Yeah, and this predates us, of course. But I think, as Austin mentioned in the introduction, this one is the only housing element site in this sort of quadrant of the city, and I think it was just to sort of distribute the I guess housing element sites throughout the city, and that's all I wanted to say. And I think the code is affirmatively furthering fair action, or affirmatively furthering fair housing. Sorry, thank you.
And that's why the density is what it is. And I think Margot wanted to make one additional comment on this. Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to touch on 3 quick points. One, as staff correctly pointed out, is that the use of concessions and waivers under the density bonus as a matter of state law does not render a project inconsistent with objective standards. So that is established in state law. The city does not have discretion around that. The second is on the CEQA question in terms of whether the project complies with the requirements for very high fire hazard severity zones under that CEQA exemption. There are specific objective standards that are laid out by reference to SB 35 and other state housing law that projects have to meet. And in this case, as indicated on your, I think it's page 8 of your staff report, the fire department did make a finding that the project has demonstrated consistency with all of those requirements. So the CEQA requirement is met, and there is evidence in the record to that effect. And then the last was just to reiterate the point I made earlier about what it means to have a specific adverse impact on health and safety under the Housing Accountability Act. And didn't have time before, but I'm just going to quickly read you the language, which requires a significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable impact based upon objective, identified, written public health and safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the date of the preliminary application. And again, on page 8 of your staff report, staff indicates, and I'm just reading here, the city does not have any adopted objective standards pertaining to evacuation in the event of a major fire or other environmental emergency. So by definition, you don't have a standard against which you can measure emergency evacuation compliance, and therefore under the Housing Accountability Act, you do not have a health and safety basis based on emergency access that would justify disapproval. So just wanted to clarify those points. I know the law can be complicated and it's a lot you guys are having to learn quickly. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much to the applicant for answering so many of the community questions. It definitely saves us a little bit of time. The public hearing portion of this is now closed, and I'll